That's a wind today. It's not often that we have a wind like this, and if you listen very carefully here in a storm like this, you can hear something. You can hear a howl, like from a dog. I'll tell you where this comes from. It was when I was still a child, when all of a sudden, on a completely normal day, a small white dog came into the village. We noticed it because no one had ever seen a white dog like that before. On top of that, one that was so hideous. He looked sick and emaciated. He had lots of bald patches, and where he still had fur, it was extremely dirty. It was a really disgusting animal. The dog hadn't done anything. He just sat beside the road in front of the houses, waited and looked straight at you when someone was passing by. Every now and then he could be found in front of another house, and then he would disappear again for a while. At some point, however, it was discovered that someone had died soon afterwards in the house where he had last sat. And as soon as this person was buried, the dog reappeared and sat in front of the next house. Sometimes someone fell off the roof while carrying out repairs, or someone was killed by a tree while felling wood. A few times someone fell into the river and couldn't get out. We told all this to our priest at some point, but he just said that it was superstition and that we should leave the poor creature alone. One day, we finally found the dog in front of my friend Franz Peller's house. His father immediately said that the beast had to be driven away instantly, otherwise the mischief it was bringing with it would end up affecting them. First, he tried to chase the animal away himself. He kicked at the dog and gave it a hard step, but it was like kicking a heavy sack of flour. He then tried to carry it away, but although the animal was so emaciated, he could grab and pull as much as he wanted, and still couldn't get it up. Franz's father began to sweat and pant. It cost him so much strength that he had to lie down afterwards, and never got up again. You could still hear his coughing in the street that night, until it suddenly fell silent, and he was dead the next morning. It was clear to everyone that things could not go on like this with that dog. The beast had to go. So people decided to get rid of him together. The next time the dog appeared, a few men gathered around and shouted at it, but the mutt wasn't the least bit interested. Nobody wanted to touch him after what had happened to Franz's father. So the next thing we kids did was to go there and throw stones at it. I remember quite clearly that I hit it too, but the dog hadn't moved at all. That was the moment when even the priest was convinced that it couldn't be a creature of God, and that it had to be confronted with something other than stones. Together with his Bible and the sacristan carrying the monstrance, the priest set off towards the dog, and as he rounded the corner, the beast suddenly began to whine. The whole time, this dog had never made a sound, but the sight of either the priest or the monstrance made him turn tail in fear. However, it had not driven him away. Instead, a wind arose that grew stronger and stronger the closer the priest got to the beast. Finally, a storm swept through all the alleyways, whirling the dust from the street everywhere, and its sound was only drowned out by the whining of the little monster. When the priest finally began to pray in front of the dog, the sky darkened and a thunderstorm broke out. People ran into their houses and closed the shutters. I can still remember how we all sat anxiously together while the storm raged outside. The sacristan later told me that at some point he couldn't stand it any longer. He had then left the monstrance on the floor in front of the dog and had run home. No one could have blamed him. We had all been sitting at home shivering together, until suddenly there was silence. The wind died down and you couldn't hear a sound in the alleyways. The men of the village were the first to come out of the houses. Everything was empty in the truest sense of the word. Everything was deserted. Even the dog was gone, and the priest was found at home. He suddenly had snow-white hair, and from then on, he never spoke a single word again. A few days later, he was picked up and taken to a monastery, and we got a new priest. Because the old one never said anything again, none of us knows exactly what happened to the dog. But sometimes, when it storms like today, you can hear him howling again. Do you notice it? Because I can already hear it.